I'm Gary Williams. Your reviews help other people find this podcast. If you would, please leave a review on iTunes.
There's nothing called as bad leadership. I say there's called as catastrophic leadership. Because bad leaders, there's none called as bad. They lead to a catastrophe in the organization. Okay?
Coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time.
Ricky told me to go find a scale on the side of the road and to stand on it. All right, so the camera adds 15 pounds, but what does the microphone add? And while I make up excuses like it's the holidays, he also wanted me to tell you this is episode 102 of the Fremont Podcast.
Now, here's your host, Ricky B.
So I am excited to have Pankaj Prasoon with me on the podcast today. We met at Banter Books. Banter Books is one of our sponsors, and I'm really excited to have them as a sponsor because I love brick and mortar stores. This is my little blurb to say go out and get your books from Banter Books because we need to support our small local businesses. But I met Pankaj at Banter Books. I was there talking to Amy. And you were there as well, right?
Yep.
And you were talking to her about this book that you have written. Is that right?
Yes.
They're also, Banter Books is also a neighbor of yours, I guess?
Technically not a neighbor because we live upstairs.
Okay,
so I mean,
okay.
in the same place. And you know, I've been a huge avid reader, so I support books from that perspective. And before I begin, right?
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to buy the book from Banter, I'm going to personally give discount from my end as well.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Because I want to support brick and mortar because I'm a person who wants to touch and feel and, you know, live the book from that perspective.
That's
so
great.
I support that cause and I want to support what Amy is doing. So
that's awesome.
From that perspective.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So your book is called Leading with Purpose, Igniting Success, Inspiring Teams, and Creating Positive Change. The subtitle is The Power of Visionary Leadership in a Digital Era. So, give me your elevator pitch. What's this book all about?
So this book obviously is part of my own journey of 18 years in the tech industry, having lived across 4 continents, 52 countries,
Wow.
met a lot of people. And you know what I've figured out that it takes purpose as a leader to accomplish something, okay? And the book narrates obviously my own 5 instances of leaders I've worked with in last 5 to 10 years. And also crafts the narrative in terms of somebody who's just starting their journey as a manager or you know, who wants to go to the C-suite, right? What do they need to do?
Okay.
And it touches upon real life stories and incidents of executives, of business leaders, of politicians, of social economist leaders on how they went about doing it, okay? And I'm a huge fan and admirer of stories because, you know, nothing sticks better than stories to you, right?
That's right.
So most of the conversation in the book you'll find in terms of real life incident and real life stories on how people have gone about doing it, including myself.
Okay. You were just saying that like the first 15 pages of this book was part of your story that took place right here in Fremont. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. So this is my 12th year in the Fremont. I love the city.
Okay.
In fact, 12th year in the US as well.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I was just telling this to my spouse that she was asking me, you don't need maps while driving during the Tri-City. And I said, absolutely not, because I feel home here.
That's great. That's great.
And you know, the way it's been structured, it's very easy to conveniently put into your map as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I love Fremont from that perspective. And again, this 5 stories which I've put across for executives and leaders actually came from while I was working here at Fremont with different people and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And how they have inspired me in terms of narrating my own craft, changing my own style, as well as things which I learned from them. And I'm happy to talk about few in the conversation as well.
Well, let me ask you. So you said you have lived in 4 different continents and a slew of countries, right? So give me your origin. Like what was little Pankaj dreaming about when you were a child, and how did you get here where you are now?
Very interesting, okay, and I think it's going to give me a lot of deja vu moments now. First of all, I was born in India,
Okay.
A city called as Mumbai or even Bombay.
Okay.
And a lot of things which I do today and which I've put in the book as well came from my dad, who was a government service. And that meant that we were living states out of states, okay?
Okay.
Just if you want to compare, like just in California and New York, so from East Coast to West Coast to Northern to Southern, right?
Okay, okay.
So that way I got the opportunity to meet a lot of people, meet a lot of cultural aspect. And given the fact that we are 1.3 billion in population,
Yeah.
every 5-10 miles, the language changes, the food changes, right?
Oh, wow.
So I learned, my first learning was, how do you respect diversity? How do you learn from different culture? And, how do you respect and acknowledge few nuances in terms of that? And that actually helped me a lot when I moved out of India, because as a student, I never dreamt of that I'm going to go out of India. It
Right.
just suddenly
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And I was told, hey, look, you have to go to Singapore and Malaysia for a project. And, I was in the flight. I didn't even realize I was going out of India until I landed there, okay? So as a child, obviously, I dreamt about doing well in studies, and because that's culturally comes to us.
That's right.
But my father and mother always inculcated this: be a better human being than an educated person, because that will land you well in wherever
great.
you go. And I think over a period of time, at least I've accomplished with my education. I did my engineering from India in computer science, did my MBA from Cornell, and now I'm doing well in what I'm doing professionally. And I think personally also, I have this philosophy of giving back to community, okay? Which is what I learned from a childhood perspective. Yeah, it was a fun ride, a lot of learning, a lot of friends, a lot of people, a lot of good food to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I said. When I saw this coffee and this, I was like,
That's
wow,
right.
I love it.
That's
right?
right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you and I have talked for maybe 10 minutes before we began this conversation, maybe a little bit longer than that. But I was just telling you before we started recording that I love the fact that you have reflected on moments either in your life. I mean, you've used the phrase deja vu a couple times. So your first ice cream that you had when you came here was right down the street. When you came down here into the basement under Devout Coffee, it reminded you of your college days. And then even just as you've reflected on these different things in your life, it seems that you have kind of like this place that you store up these special moments or these special memories that are significant to you, that really have impacted you to become the leader that you are, the person who understands the world that you live in, the way that you do. I think that's pretty awesome. I think we need people like that. And then even just the fact that you want to support your community and be involved in your community, I think is a huge thing. So the fact that you were noticing those sort of things as a child, traveling around India, is significant. Was there anything specific? And maybe you write about this in the book, but is there anything specific that you can point back to and say these were, or this was the specific moment, or this was a life-changing moment, or this really kind of set me on the trajectory to where I am today in one way or the other?
There are many, in fact, to be honest, right, Ricky? And I'll take you to the first moment of, I think, enlightenment or, aha moment, which I got. And this was, I think we were posted in the northeastern part of India, which is very secluded.
Okay.
And obviously, I tell the real beauty of India is in those places where, you have nature, you have people who are very warmth and things like that. And I was, I think, grade 9, and this was my first time going and presenting in front of the entire school, and it was an extempore speech, okay? I'll tell you, for the first time I faced the mic, I had my entire collar wet. I was nervous. I was shivering. And, I scrambled and I just delivered it and I just walked out. And you know what? Far away was my dad standing there, okay? He saw and he noticed. He didn't tell me anything. He said, great job done. And a couple of weeks back down the day, and he was just walking past with me, and we were walking around, and he said, look, let me tell you something. When I faced first time speaking to people, even I had this. I was nervous. My collar got wet.
Yeah.
I was scrambling, right? So it's absolutely okay. It's all right to show vulnerability. It's all right to be nervous. What you need to do is, practice. You need to come back and reflect. Don't be hard on yourself, but think of these small improvements which you can do in yourself. And I'll tell you, Ricky, that served me a lot because, after that, I could speak on any damn forum extemporally, any place you peep me, whether it's in front of 2,000 people, 3,000 people. And I think it reflected back to me saying, hey, look, we have to do our homework. In fact, whenever I go and speak as a speaker or even in my team meetings, I prep. My dad taught me the art of prepping before you walk into a conversation. Okay? Even today, when I was walking around, my wife asked me, what are you doing? And I was putting in my thoughts in the piece of paper. Hey, look, what do I need to talk about?
There you go.
What is that, people would want to hear from me, or Ricky would want to be, knowing about me and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So preparation serves a lot. I know it's a lot of hard work, but again, if you're undisciplined, if you're not putting that hard work, forget about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to... Elon Musk didn't become Elon Musk the day, he was born. Neither Bill Gates, right?
Yeah.
Neither Steve Jobs.
That's right.
They all put in that hard work and they continue to put that hard work in, right? So I think that's something which I learned the hard.
I think that's a great point. You've made two things that I want to touch on, and I'll just start with this one since you just said it. One is you've got to prepare. You've got to plan. Like success is intentional, right? Well, maybe not always intentional. Maybe there's some luck that comes in from time to time, right? Good fortune. But you look at people who have been very successful, and it didn't come to them by accident. They took advantage of the opportunities. They prepared. They planned, and they worked really, really hard at having a clear vision for what they were doing, not just in the big moments, but in the small moments as well. And so I think that is very critical.
We'll be right back. You can hear the rest of this conversation in just a moment.
If you have enjoyed this podcast, consider supporting it with a small gift at buymeacoffee.com/the Fremont Podcast. Thank you for your support and thanks for listening. If you are looking to buy or sell your home, look no further than Petrocelli Homes. You can find out more about them at petrocellihomes.com or pay Jennifer a visit in downtown Niles. Gemby Electric exists to empower your production. If you're a business owner, you know there's nothing that you want more than to focus on what you do best so that you can grow your business. Don't let electrical problems or projects stop you from your greatest production. Call Gemby Electric and let them help you empower your production today.
And now, back to our conversation.
But I love what you said as well when you said you wanted to be successful, but you wanted to be a good person. And I think that's so important. I do. My wife and I have this conversation. We talk about the fact that, we have two boys, and I think that parents a lot of times, I think for the right reasons, they want their kids to be successful. But I think more and more the world is forgetting that we need good people. We need people who are willing to care about the community that they live in, who are willing to sacrifice and invest, for no return, just to be able to see good things happen. And I love the fact that that's something that's important to you, to not just be successful, because it seems that you have been successful. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have a story to write this book on, right? But you also seem to be someone who cares about the society that you live in as well. And I think that's remarkable. Why do you think you feel that way? Why do you think you feel that it's important to be a good person, to be intentional in even being good? Why do you think that's important? Or what have you experienced in your own life that you've seen the benefit of that?
It was right pandemic, I think 2020, and we were expecting our first child, okay? Again, a boy, born in Fremont.
Yep.
And he loves Fremont. In fact, he says that, I live in Fremont.
That's great.
So, and during that point in time, I was transitioning professionally as well. So I joined a company 6 months back as vice president to accomplish something. Okay. And guess what? Microsoft, a dream company, came my way and they said, hey, look, we want you to come and lead something which is much more inspiring. And, my ability to create an impact on the larger community of people in the tech as well as outside was higher. And I said, forget about the pay and the position. I think I want to do this because, it lets me create a broader impact, both in the enterprise world, even in the community side. And I was very clear that even though I take a pay cut, I want to go and do this. And I went and spoke to the president of the company where I was working, and I said, hey, look, Microsoft had reached out. It's a dream company. When you're born in India, you want to work for these tech giants, right? And I had, fun fact, in 15 years back, I had declined an offer from Microsoft.
Okay. Wow.
Because it wasn't aligning to what I wanted to do.
Okay.
So this was, again.
This was kind of like coming back.
Karma coming back
full circle.
To you, right?
Yeah.
And I said, look, as much I want to continue because I'm enjoying the work, but I think this is something which is much more inspiring. I have an ability to do much more impactful work. And she said, okay, fine. She had tears rolling her eyes. I could literally see on the conversation, right, in the video. But she said, okay, fine. I'll let you go and chase this. Don't worry about it. Go. If you need anything in I can be of help, please let me know. And I said, okay, fine. So 15th of June was my last day then in the company. And guess what? My son was born on 8th of June in Washington Hospital. And I said, hey, look, probably I need to spend time with my family, with my wife, because, she needs that support, right?
It's a week after he was born, right?
8th of June, right? And I said, look, I can't continue to my work. I have to take a leave because it was pandemic. I called her immediately saying, hey, look, this is the great news I have for you. But I also want to say that I can't work for next 7 days. I want to take that leave off. And you guess what she said?
What?
She said, Pankaj, this is the best ever deal and the biggest ever deal in your life. Go and chase it. Don't worry about the work. You let customers and anybody know to contact me. You will have your entire salary, your entire bonuses. Don't worry about it. Effectively, you don't have to work from 8th of June, but 15th will be your last day. And what, Ricky, what inspired me was I had worked 15 years for another company previously. And they weren't as warm, and I had, slogged hard. And this is a leader in front of me. Her name is Ashley, and I've spoken about her. Who has a vision, who's empathetic, who understands about building relationships and things like that. And guess what? I'm today also in touch with her. I speak with her and things like that, right? So, and that's where I realized that it is important for me to go and craft this and tell people that, hey, look, you get inspirations for people around you because they have a sense of purpose, not at work, even outside work, right? So learn that craft, learn those attributes and see how can you accomplish in your own life. So that day, I'll tell you, 8th of June is when I redefined my own purpose. And I said, hey, look, my job is to give it back to community in any shape and form. And I've been treading towards it in some shape or form. And I would say my wife is super supportive on that. And I think we're seeing that in our child as well. He's 2.5 years, but still he values, all of these aspects and things like that. And that's the value, belief, and principles we want to inculcate in him as well.
That's awesome.
So in 2 words, describe what success looks for you.
Oh, wow. This is great. I love this. I would say success is happiness and fulfillment.
Awesome. And I'll tell you what you said just now, Ricky. It's a good segue and relates back to my book as well. Because what you told me is the outcome. Happiness and fulfillment is an outcome of what you want, what you have done or what you want to do, right? And I touch upon in my book that finding success is finding your purpose. The day you find your own purpose, I'm pretty sure you put everything, your heart and soul behind it because you feel happy about it. Think of this. I mean, if you and I aren't happy and I told you to go and do a work, the result will be, hey, look, it's just going to be, hey, let me drag this and let me get over it, right? But if you're truly passionate about it, if you're truly, that's your purpose, for example, giving back to Fremont and the community. Look, the passion which you exhibit in your podcast as well, right? So I always tell people finding purpose is the true definition of success. The day you find your own purpose, I'm pretty sure relentlessly you'll work hard towards accomplishing it.
Oh, wow. That's
sorry,
really
I spoke
great.
a lot, but
No, that's great. That's great. I love it. That's what we're here for. So let me ask you this. We're going to go into kind of like a laboratory moment here. So I haven't read the book. You were very kind to bring me a copy of the book, and you just signed it, which I'm super grateful for. And it's more than just a signature. You wrote a very kind note here, so thank you for that. So when we talk about leading with purpose, inspiring teams, what are the keys to leading well? What are the keys that you've discovered? And we've just kind of talked a bit. I think we've had kind of like a high level, an overview of the kind of things that have influenced you and the kind of things that have impacted you to write what you've written, and you've kind of given that redefining moment even that you just shared. When you look at a leader, or when you look at a team, what are the things that you identify as being good and healthy in those roles, and what are some of the things that are maybe not so good and healthy in a leader or in a team?
Great question. Okay. So I think I always want to call out, a lot of people get this misconception that a leader has to be a manager.
Okay.
That's right. You need to be a manager before you become a leader.
Yeah, I hear
but
that.
That's absolutely not true.
Okay.
Because I think leadership is a trait.
Okay.
It's a craft.
Okay.
It's an art.
Okay.
It's not a science. And
Okay.
management is a science.
Okay.
Right? So managing people is a science, but leading people is an art. Okay. And you will have to, like any art form, if you want to paint, you want to, do music.
Yeah.
You need to practice.
That's right.
You need to learn, relearn, and unlearn. Right. That cycle has to continue. To your point, at the last of the book, there are 15 principles I have actually summarized, which says key principles for people to lead with purpose. But I'll give you 5, which are very, very important.
Okay.
One is absolute clarity on vision. As a person or as an individual, you need to be very clear what's my North Star going to be. And having that conviction of going and rallying people and explaining them why that is the North Star. Think of this. If you have 15 people with you and you can't inspire them to run behind with the same cause and the same purpose, which means it's not worth.
Yeah.
You're going to have people who are just going to be there with you because you are their managers and things like that. But you're not leading from that perspective, right? So one is vision and clarity of thought. Second is communication. And that sets the tone, right? In the sense, you have to be hyper communicative. I always tell people is always communication executive officer. It's not chief officer. Because your job in the C-suite is to communicate clarity, transparency, so that you can build that trust with people. And often I've seen culturally, as well as when there's a crisis, you just want to shut it down.
Yeah.
You just don't want to tell people and things like that, right? You want to isolate. Absolutely not, right? And that leads to speculation and things like that. And I also touched this upon in the book. I mean, if you look at the way COVID crisis was handled in the US and in New Zealand, was a completely drastic approach because of the leadership styles of people. Okay, I'm not saying that one versus good is bad other,
Sure.
but you have to look at in the context in what you're looking at. So the second is communication.
Yeah.
Third is being empathetic toward people. And when I say empathy, it's not being sympathy, right? In the sense, and you have to put yourself in their shoes and see what they're going through, and give them the space to be, be vulnerable, able to, trust them and things like that. Fourth is be a coach. And when I say coach, coach is somebody who works with you to elevate your strength and minimize your weaknesses. He's working for you. He's showing you what you're capable of, things like that, right?
Yeah.
So as a leader, you have to be a coach.
Yeah.
You can be a mentor, but learn the craft of coaching. Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
And fifth but not least, give. Give as much as you can, whether it's time, personal energy, whether it's money and things like that. Because the more you give, the more is good going to come back to you as well, right? So I think, and that's where I see a lot of leaders now doing a corporate social responsibility where they're giving back to the community and things like that, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I love those. Thank you for parsing that out and sharing those particular things here. What I hear in all of those things is a sense of community, a lack of individualism, and more of a sense of companionship, I guess, if you will, partnering with people. Because I think that sometimes we view success as something that happens individually. It happens for me alone. Like I'm doing what I'm doing for me, And I think that people can fight hard that way, and perhaps what they find is success defined the way that they want it.
Yeah.
But when you look at it from the big picture, it's something that success really ought to be something that is identified not by you alone, but by the people that are around you, the people that can look at you and say what they are accomplishing is good for everyone, and I think that's great. That's one of the conversations that I had with my son recently. He's excited. He loves the Fremont podcast, and he loves, hearing these different stories. He's 11 years old. And I told him, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. I'm just simply saying this because I think it's important for me to, I guess let me back up and say this. As I hear you talk, as I heard those 5 principles that you just shared, I started thinking of all the ways that I could do better at what I do, and the way I need to lead better, the way that I need to reprocess the opportunities and the places that I am that I have been given in leadership, and I realize I could do better at this, and I need to change this and do these things differently. And I was talking to my son, and I was telling him, he was saying that, I want to be on your podcast. And I was like, yeah, it would be great. But there was a moment where he was even complaining about, like, why have I never been on it? And I told him, I said, I'd love to have you on it. I'd love to be able to share that moment with you. But I told him, I said, the reason why I do the podcast is not because I want to hear my voice. I want my voice to be heard. It's because there are so many other people out there whose voices are worth being heard, and they don't have a platform and the opportunity to share. And so I told him, I said, my hope is that through the podcast that I'm giving people a platform where their voice can be heard when nobody's listening, and I that's what I want. So it's not about me having my voice heard and my voice being influential. It's actually me giving other people the power to be heard where they can be. And so when I hear these principles that you're talking about, of being a good leader, of being a leader that makes a difference in people's lives, it is the kind of person that doesn't think about themselves first. It thinks they think about other people, and the empathy, the generosity, all those different elements of those 5 points that you gave are thinking outside of myself, thinking of other people. What are some of the things that you can say that, like, when let's just say you walk into a room and you are looking for, are they good leaders? Is this a good environment, or are they bad leaders? Like, what are some of the things that you might spot right away that would indicate bad leadership? I mean, there's the antithesis of what you just said. Like, yes, they're not generous, they're not, but what are there some key things that you would say these are immediately, when I see this is a red flag?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, this can't be apt, Rick. You know why? Because I was poached by a company. They wanted me to interview for an executive position. And I said, look, I'm not looking out, right? But if you really want me to speak, I want to speak to the person who I'm going to work with and, who are going to report into me, right? That's very important for me to understand.
Yeah.
So all the 3 ways, right? I'm reporting to, who's my peers, and who's going to report into me, right? Long story short, what I look for people is, there's nothing called as bad leadership. I say there's called as catastrophic leadership. Because bad leaders, there's none called as bad. They lead to a catastrophe in the organization. Okay, good or bad, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So number one, as people, as individuals, we get paid to take decisions. So I want people to come and take decisions, and it's okay. I'm looking at the risk aversity index, in the sense your ability to take decision under crisis. Jeff Bezos, and I speak about in the book as well. You may not have all the data at your disposal. So how much gut can you use, right? In the sense to take that decision in uncertainty, right? That's number one. Number two, how much are they listening? Active listening, again, another trait, okay?
Yeah,
is what I'm looking for. How much are they listening to you? How much are they, if you are giving a clue, like example, I'm speaking to you, you're picking on things, right?
Yeah.
Which shows that, look, you're being attentive. You're getting those insights of what I'm trying to speak and trying to convey, right? So I'm also looking when I'm speaking to individuals and things like that, how much is they're listening and paying attention to. Number three is their body language. How excited are they in this conversation? Because if as an executive and leader, you can't be excited and passionate about it, why are you just warming up the chair? Just leave.
That's right.
Fourth, which I often tell people, I've learned this the hard way of my 18 years, is that people often compare experience with your ability to create an impact. And that's not true. And when I say that, I love people. Why do you love to listen to people who are Forbes under 30 and 30? 40 under 40? Because these are individuals whom you did not think that they could accomplish what a 50-year or 60-year-old is able to do, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So don't compare. Yes, experiential learning is phenomenal,
Sure.
but you can always learn from people like Ricky, Pankaj and things like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what I'm looking for is people who have that ability and the art to come and stand up and say, look, I got this. Right? That's a great leadership. And if people who don't have it, that's what I put in the catastrophic world, right? Saying, and fifth but not the least, which is very often that if you as an individual has to speak about your promotion and salary hike with your manager or a leader, which means you're not in the great position to be in. Because if he's really truly motivated, to your point, that's why I said inspire teams. If he's really inspiring you, he's going to work backwards for you to give you that ability and impact so that his job in getting you promoted and getting salary hikes are taken care. So if you're having that conversation with managers and leaders, you're anyway starting in back foot.
Wow.
And I tell this to my team also. Don't come and tell me you want promotions because you want 20% raise. Or don't tell me that you want 20% raise. That's a wrong conversation because you're starting on a back foot. You tell, hey, look, this is my North Star. In next 2 years, this is where I want to go. Pankaj, can you help me reach there?
Wow. Yeah.
So you put your manager and leader in that spot to tell you and guide you, become that coach for you.
That's great.
And in that process, what you're doing is they're going to invest on you. And once you start investing, anyway, it's in human psychology, right?
That's right.
If you invest on something, you want returns to come.
That's right. That's
So,
awesome. Yeah.
And I want to end this to a point, right? Which you said, which is where you're briefing about your son.
Yeah.
I think the sixth principle, which is inspire others. So, Ricky, in your job, look, you have a fanboy now who's feeling inspired, right?
Right.
So as a leader, you tell stories in such a manner that people feel inspired, saying, I want to work for that
That's
individual.
right. Yeah. That's awesome.
Billy Roy's Burgers in Centerville is a great place to enjoy family, food, and great service. You can find them off the corner of Thornton Avenue and Fremont Boulevard in Centerville. Milk and Honey Cafe is a family-owned restaurant located at 34265 Fremont Boulevard. Right now, they are offering a mid-autumn festival family meal special for dine-in or to-go. You got to check it out. Just drop in or give them a call and ask them more about it. To find out more about the best family-friendly Taiwanese restaurant in Fremont, go to milkandhoneycafe.com or check them out on their Facebook page and Instagram. Howler's Pharmacy is here to help. They have been in our community for decades. So whether it's a seasonal issue or whether it's something that you have to take care of regularly, Howler's Pharmacy is here to help you find exactly what you need. Check them out on the corner of Fremont and Peralta in downtown Centerville.
What's interesting to me, and I think this is something that I've noticed since I've lived near the Silicon Valley, is that you have people that are, like you said, that it was a dream job of working for Microsoft, right? And it was offered to you 15 years ago or, whatever. And I think I see a lot of people that move to this particular area because of the dream job that they're chasing. And so much of that is in the digital world, the digital, the technology world that we live in. You have the power of a visionary leadership in the digital era is your subtitle for your book here. But what's interesting is that everything, maybe not everything, but most of what you have said and most of what you've talked about is in this book. It's about analog things, tangible things. So you've invested your life, your career into developing technology, and yet here you have a book where I don't know how many pages this is, almost over 300 pages that you've written about what could be identified as analog, human, physical things that are important. So what is the relationship for you between the digital world and what you've talked about already and what you've shared here in the analog world? Because I think it's interesting, when I moved here and I was around people who were working at, say, Google or at Facebook or, Apple or all these different companies, I started seeing that like the rest of the world takes advantage, rightly so, of the work that is done here. But I would go to the park with my son when he was young, and I still go to the park, but it was just interesting to me that I would see all these families with their kids out playing at the park, and they all have their jackets on that say Google or Apple or, Microsoft, but and some people are on their phones, but for the most part, people are sharing their lives with the people around them. And there's a very analog relationship that's happening in those moments by the very people that are creating these digital environments that the rest of the world is like, bought into. What's that relationship like for you between those two?
I'll tell you a very deep question. Our digital world, or say analog world, is when we are logged in at Microsoft.com or at Google.com and things like that, right? That's the time. But think of this. We are baking and building products which are going to inspire people which are in the real world. Whether you look at an Apple iPhone to a Microsoft AI assistant and things like that.
Yeah.
So our job is to understand customers. Our job is to understand people. Our job is to be centrist towards that conversation, right? So, and I'll tell you, this is what MBA taught me. And I'll tell you, this was one of the best thing I did was to do my post-graduation in the States, because I think the way it's taught here is completely different what I experienced in India, okay?
Okay.
It's very real life driven.
Okay.
So before, if you had spoken to me 5-10 years back, I could talk in technology jargons, okay?
Okay.
And what MBA taught me that, hey, look, the digital divide, the divide between the tech of the world and the real life of the world has to be bridged by real people who understand both sides of the world. So now what I've done is, Ricky, that I can have a conversation with a tech geek, what we call, and I can have a conversation with somebody selling a croissant at a store, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's what obviously, MBA teaches you. Even lifelong learning will teach you. To your point, at the end of the day, if you look at the people wearing Googles, the Microsofts, and the Apples of the world, they're all human beings. They're all individuals like us.
That's right.
They have a life after 5 or even at 4, right? And things like that.
Yeah.
So it is very important for us to keep these worlds very separately. And in fact, I'll tell you, one of the best innovations which I developed in last 3 years came out from my conversation speaking to somebody at Costco.
Really?
Right. So think
That's
of
cool.
this. Another AI assistant which I worked upon came out when I saw my niece reading a book and she asked me 20 things. Right? So what I'm trying to say is that I am learning and understanding what real life people are going through, because at the end of the day, I'm a human being. I'm not a scientist, or I'm not a robot, right?
Yeah.
So how do you take that, go back in the work which you're doing, right? And how do you create and craft something which is going to be much more inspiring?
I love these moments that you are drawing from that have inspired you and to really help you to articulate this, because you said it was a deep question that I asked, and actually I don't even know that I articulated the question well, except for the fact that I wanted to know the relationship that you felt was between the digital world and the physical world. And I think that that's an important question that we need to, even as users, even as consumers, I think that we need to ask, because one of the things that I say often, especially to my son who's getting older, is that technology needs to be an extension of our reality, not a replacement of our reality. And I think that that's sometimes where it goes wrong, where we want to escape the reality that we live in, and so we dive into the digital world as though it's an alternative, and it's not an alternative. But when it's used as an extension of our reality, so you and I are hopefully going to be friends after this. We'll be able to pass each other at the bookstore or on the street, and we can stop and talk, but I may not see you again for months or even a year, but there's a way that we can connect. We can extend our reality by using technology and email or text messaging or whatever. And I think that that's something that it's important to help clarify as well. And that's what I hear you saying. I hear you saying that you are taking cues from experiences that you have in real life, like your experience in Costco, and saying this is something that needs to influence the environment that we're creating digitally and the way that we engage and we interact, because I think that is important to us as human beings. So do you see yourself continuing in the tech industry for a while, or are you looking to do, coaching, teaching, speaking on this, or are you doing both?
I'm actually doing all of them, okay?
All of the above.
Because technology happens to be my passion, and I don't want to leave that. What I've realized is that, you need that, I would say, agent who's going to take the technology world and say, people, hey, look, this is what inspiration is all about, right? So, how do you bridge that technical world to the reality of what we're living in today, right?
Yeah.
For example, I tell people and my team as well, if you can have a conversation, for example, with Ricky and me at work, okay, if you are my counterpart.
Yeah.
But if after 5 o'clock, I can hold you for a conversation for 5 minutes apart from work. That sets you the relationship which you have with.
That's great.
Right. So build relationship apart from work. Right. To your point, what I do now, I teach digital marketing and product management because not because I want to teach, because I strongly believe in the world of people and students, you get ask the toughest questions, okay? Because they are not looking at you. They're not judge you. They're going to ask you right bluntly, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people to you as well. Because you have a son, there are 2 words which a 3-year or a 5-year-old will often say, which is why and no.
That's right.
And I think we also individuals have to learn as we grow that we have to always ask this question: why? Why are we doing this?
That's good.
Right? And that is very important. So I'm teaching. I will continue to, work in the tech. But what I've realized is I've sold almost 10,000 copies of the book in the US itself.
Wow.
Few of my actually friends and one of somebody whom I didn't know reached out to me through my website and just said, fine, you talk about leading with purpose, but how do I find my purpose? And being a certified coach, which I am, and I said, look, I'm helping people with that, right? So the next book which I'm writing is in collaboration with professors from Ivy League, on organizational behavior and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I want to mix academics as well and give people the craft on, if you are happening to be a 10-year, 15-year-old, 25-year or 35-year stuck in your career, stuck in your life, and saying, what do I do next? I'll continue to write, I'll continue to speak, I'll continue to work in the tech industry and build products which are going to inspire people. Because when I go to a store and I see this software was built by me and my team, I'll tell you, the amount of jubilation which you have, nothing else can give it to you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine that. That's really cool. Well, I'm excited. Thank you for the copy of this book. I'm looking forward to reading it and also seeing your other book come out. That'll be great. I've been in positions where I've been able to develop leadership in places. But I think for me, I struggle with the idea of managing and using the leadership opportunities that I have in a way that doesn't lead people to chaos, And so I'm excited to hear what you have to say in this, and I know this is an area that I can certainly grow in. And I think that the idea of helping people find their purpose is really important as well. Well, thank you for joining me. Before you go, you poured out your love for Fremont. What are some of your favorite things to do here in Fremont? What are some of the things that you love? Some of the memories that you've made here, living here for the last 12 years?
So again, this is the longest I've stayed outside my own country anyway, right?
Okay.
And I call Fremont as a home away from home, okay? So right in front of, think of this, things which are stuck in my career, professionally, personally, happened in Fremont. Whether it was my son, is buying my first home ever, right?
Wow.
The fact is the ecosystem is so vibrant, Ricky. For example, I would spend times and days sitting in the Fremont library, reading through the books and things like that. I would go for a walk in the Elizabeth Lake, right? It's so beautiful. The parks nearby, right? My son, I'll tell you, he likes to go to the park rather than going into in a secluded place and trying to enjoy, right?
That's great.
I think Fremont is blessed from that perspective because of the vibrancy of people and the diverse community which we have, right? Obviously, there is a lot of Asian, if you see, a lot of Indian community, but I think there is a lot of diversity as well if you compare from a Bay Area perspective. I'm a foodie. I love food. I mean, there's a lot of...
What are your favorite restaurants? Where do you go?
I go anywhere and everywhere, trust me. I mean, but of late, I have started picking raw SF from that perspective next to Banter.
Yeah.
Then there is Paradise Biryani Point.
Yep.
Then there is Italian restaurants as well. So, I mean, there's bunch, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from that perspective. Then you have movies. So, think of this. In the vicinity of Fremont, you have 3 Costco within 5 miles.
Oh, that's crazy.
Right?
That's crazy, yeah.
So, you can imagine the influx of, people and things like that. So, I mean, it would have been easy if you asked me what you don't like about Fremont.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, we have a lot of wonderful things. We have a lot of great food. We have a lot of great parks, great weather, great people, great community. But we don't, I don't think we, I don't want to say market it well, but I don't think it's something that, like, we don't try to make it what it is. I think it is what it is. And we just get the opportunity of taking advantage of it. I was talking to somebody just this last week, and I was saying I get tired of trying to, like, when I hear other people who live other places and they're talking about their community and I explain my community and they start criticizing, I'm like, you know what? I don't have to defend my community because I just know it's a great place. And there's no reason for me to try to champion what I think and believe about the city that I live in. I just think it's a great place. So I love the way that your mind thinks. Maybe we should have started off with what don't I like, because that's a much shorter list. So that's really great.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I look forward to getting to know you better and getting to know your book better. And if people wanted to find out more about you, like they can find the book at Banter Books. We'll probably I'll plan on putting everything in the show notes so people can find links and everything they need to know there. But if they wanted to find out more about what you're doing, how would they do that? You said you had a website, I think?
So again, we live in a digital world.
That's right.
So find me on LinkedIn or even go to www.pankajprasoon.com.
Okay.
You will find about my blogs, about what I do, what I'm doing new. Somebody wants to get coached and things like that.
That's great.
And again, if somebody wants to pick the book from Banter, go and ask her about the author discount. And I'll personally make sure that it's affordable. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not making any money out of the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whatever money I'm making is going to a charity.
That's great. That's great.
Right? So I want to give it back to the community in any
awesome.
shape and form I can.
Yeah.
So those are the links. And again, you can go to Banter, come to Ricky's shows.
That's right.
And ask about my whereabouts.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being on this. And I look forward to hearing more about you in the future.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
This episode was hosted and produced by Ricky B. Scheduling and pre-interviews by Sarah S. Rachel Prey is the print editor in charge of our newsletter. I'm Gary Williams. Andrew Cavett is the editor. Music provided by Soundstripe.com. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. You can find everything we make, the podcast, our newsletter, and all of our social media links at thefremontpodcast.com. Join us next week on The Fremont Podcast.
Yeah.
And fifth but not least, give. Give as much as you can. Because the more you give, the more is good going to come back to you as well, right? So I think, and that's where I see a lot of leaders now doing a corporate social responsibility where they're giving back to the community and things like that, right?
But I told him, I said, the reason why I do the podcast is not because I want to hear my voice. It's because there are so many other people out there whose voices are worth being heard, and they don't have a platform and the opportunity to share. And so I told him, I said, my hope is that through the podcast that I'm giving people a platform where their voice can be heard when nobody's listening, and I that's what I want. So it's not about me having my voice heard and my voice being influential. It's actually me giving other people the power to be heard where they can be.
This is a Muggins Media podcast.